The deadly reputation of humans. In the far corners of the galaxy, where vast empires and powerful species ruled, one thing was clear: humans were not to be underestimated. They had built their reputation across countless worlds, and it wasn't one based on wealth, peace, or diplomacy. No, humans had earned their name through something far darker and more terrifying. They had earned their reputation through their ability to fight, survive, and conquer when everything seemed impossible. The galaxy had seen many races, each with their own power and pride. The mighty Zeriths, known for their brutal strength, had enslaved entire planets. The mysterious Vexari, a species that could manipulate energy itself, had left civilizations in ruins with a single thought. But humans, they did not have the ancient power of the Vexari, nor did they possess the unmatched strength of the Zeriths. Humans had something else, something far more dangerous: their will to fight, no matter the odds. At first, the other species dismissed humanity. They saw them as a young, primitive race with no place in the complex balance of the galaxy. They watched as humans stumbled their way through wars, with primitive weapons and tactics compared to the advanced forces of the universe. But they failed to notice something important: humans never stopped fighting. In the early days, the humans were often outmatched. Their weapons were crude compared to the highly advanced technology of other species, and their ships were far less powerful. Yet every time they were pushed to the brink of destruction, humans fought back with a vengeance. The galaxy took notice, but it was too late by the time they realized the truth. One of the earliest encounters took place with the Ralkesh, a species known for their brutal invasions and incredible regenerative abilities. The Ralkesh had wiped out entire civilizations in their wake, leaving nothing but ashes behind. When they first encountered humans, they thought it would be just another easy conquest. But the humans didn't surrender. They didn't retreat. They fought with everything they had. The humans' approach to warfare was unlike anything the Ralkesh had seen before. Their tactics were chaotic, unpredictable, and strangely effective. Instead of standing in the open to fight like most species, humans fought from the shadows, using their surroundings to their advantage. They adapted quickly, learning the weaknesses of the Ralkesh and using them against them. The battle lasted for days, with the Ralkesh taking heavy losses. This was the first sign to the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. As the word spread, more and more species began to realize the truth. Humans were survivors, and the galaxy had learned the hard way that when a human is cornered, they do not surrender. They fight until the end. It wasn't just in large battles that humans proved their terrifying reputation. Time and again, they had faced impossible odds. On one occasion, a small group of humans was caught on a hostile world, surrounded by a much stronger enemy. They were outnumbered 10 to 1, with no reinforcements in sight, and their weapons were outdated. But when the enemy closed in, expecting an easy victory, the humans fought back with a fury that left their opponents shocked. The enemy had never seen anything like it. Instead of fearing death, the humans welcomed it, and in doing so, they made it their weapon. They fought like animals backed into a corner, using every trick they knew, no matter how desperate. In the end, the enemy was forced to retreat. The humans had won against overwhelming odds. It was these stories that started to spread throughout the galaxy. Humans were ruthless in battle. They never stopped, never surrendered, and never hesitated. The more the galaxy learned about them, the more they realized that humans were the most dangerous species of all. Some species tried to reason with humans, offering alliances, thinking they could control them. But humans weren't interested in alliances or deals. They didn't need them. They were self-reliant, and that made them even more terrifying. The galaxy could not tame them, nor could they be intimidated. One of the most terrifying traits of humans was their unpredictability. The way they would break every known rule of warfare and still come out victorious. They didn't fight like the others. They didn't rely on large fleets of ships or overwhelming firepower. Instead, they relied on their resourcefulness, their creativity, and their sheer will to win. This was something no other species could match. When humans arrived on a new world, it wasn't just their weapons that made the galaxy shake. It was their very presence. The tension in the air was palpable, and it was clear to all. No one was safe from humanity's wrath, unstoppable against the odds. The galaxy had underestimated the humans once, and that mistake would prove costly. What made humanity truly terrifying was their ability to adapt. No other species had seen such a rapid evolution of strategy and technology under pressure. Where other civilizations may have faltered, humans simply found new ways to survive, and often to win. After the first brutal encounters, rumors about humanity's fighting spirit began to spread across the galaxy. But these were no longer just stories whispered in corners of bars and meeting halls. The news reached the leaders of powerful galactic empires and warlords, who began to take note. Yet still, many believed the humans were just a fluke, a lucky race that had somehow survived beyond all odds. The turning point came when the mighty Tikoran Empire, one of the galaxy's most feared and technologically advanced civilizations, decided to test humanity's strength firsthand. The Tikoran had never lost a battle in thousands of years. Their war machines were unlike anything any other species had seen. Massive, towering battlecruisers, capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot. It was the Tikoran who, after years of domination, sought to expand their territory further, setting their sights on a remote human colony on the edge of their space. The humans, as usual, had no idea what they were about to face. The Tikoran arrived with their massive fleet, confident that they would wipe out the colony and claim the planet without effort. But what the Tikoran didn't know was that humans never surrendered. And once again, they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The battle began with the overwhelming force of the Tikoran fleet descending upon the human colony. Their massive warships unleashed deadly fire upon the colony, as they expected the humans to flee, cower, and beg for mercy. But that's not what happened. In response, the humans did not retreat. Instead, they launched what seemed like an impossible counteroffensive. They used their old, seemingly outdated warships in ways the Tikoran could not have anticipated. The humans had no massive, super-advanced battle cruisers of their own, but they had strategy, and they had sheer determination. The humans knew they couldn't outgun the Tikoran, but what they could do was make the fight as unpredictable and chaotic as possible. They attacked with speed, using small, agile ships to strike at vulnerable points in the Tikoran fleet. They didn't attack head-on. Instead, they targeted supply lines, weapons caches, and even the Tikoran's weaker shields. The humans moved in and out of battle faster than their enemies could react, using every inch of terrain and space to their advantage. The Tikoran were stunned. Their enemies were everywhere, attacking from angles they hadn't even considered. And as the humans continued their attacks, they began to tear apart the once invincible Tikoran fleet. It wasn't just the humans' weapons that were devastating. It was their ability to predict, react, and outthink their enemies at every turn. Every move made by the Tikoran was countered by a human strategy they hadn't expected. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Tikoran found themselves on the defensive, losing ship after ship as human tactics became more aggressive and more daring. The battle raged on for days, with the humans never backing down. What had started as an invasion turned into a desperate struggle for the Tikoran Empire to escape with their remaining ships intact. In the end, the Tikoran were forced to retreat. The humans had fought back an empire, not through overwhelming force, but through sheer willpower and the ability to outlast and outthink their enemy. The battle, once thought to be a sure victory for the Tikoran, ended with them fleeing in humiliation. The Tikoran had learned the hard way that humanity was a force unlike anything they had ever encountered before, and as they retreated, they realized that the humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, fighters who would never give up. But this was only the beginning. With every victory, the reputation of humanity continued to spread. The galaxy was beginning to understand the truth. Humans were no longer just a fledgling species. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and it was too late for anyone to stop them. The Tikurin's humiliation. The Tikurin Empire had never encountered defeat like this before. The retreat was chaotic. The once proud fleet of the Tikurin, famous for their massive warships and nearly impenetrable defenses, now limped away from the battlefield, broken and battered. They had underestimated the humans, and now the galaxy would see the price of that mistake. In the aftermath, the Tikurin High Command convened. The fleet's commanders were furious. They had never imagined such a devastating defeat. A few warships had survived the human ambush, but they were in no condition to fight again for a long time. The Tikurin had spent centuries conquering weaker civilizations, but humans had turned the tables on them with nothing more than their quick thinking and relentless will to survive. But it was not just the Tikurin that now feared humanity. Other species across the galaxy began to take note of what had happened. They had been watching from the sidelines, keeping their distance, and trying to understand the strange new species that had begun to stir unrest. The humans had made an impact, but now their true nature was being revealed. Soon, emissaries from the Vicarian Alliance, a coalition of species who had historically dominated the outer sectors, arrived at the human colonies. The Vicarians had long been a dominant force, known for their immense strength and a military that had never known defeat. They had heard the rumors of the humans' daring victory against the Tikurin, and they were curious, but also cautious. The Vicarian representatives demanded to meet with the human leaders to discuss the events that had just taken place. They wanted answers, and they wanted to know if the humans truly had the capability to defend themselves against the galaxy's mightiest powers. But when the meeting finally took place, the humans did not respond with the pomp and ceremony that the Vicarians were used to. Instead, they spoke plainly, giving no indication of the pride or arrogance that usually accompanied superior civilizations. They simply laid out the facts. They had been attacked. They had fought back. And they had won. The Vicarians were taken aback. The human response was different from anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't a display of power or force. It was calm, practical, and most terrifyingly of all, unpredictable. The Vicarians, for the first time, realized that they might be outmatched by a species they had initially dismissed. The humans weren't just resilient. They were clever, and their unpredictable nature made them nearly impossible to defeat. In the galactic councils, the word began to spread that the humans were not just another species. They were something else entirely. The Vicarians had seen wars, battles, and conquests beyond most species' imagination. But this new species, with their astonishing ingenuity, had shaken them. The galaxy's powerhouses were starting to realize that humans were not to be underestimated. If they could defeat the Tikurin, a civilization with millennia of military expertise, then no one was safe. As the Vicarians returned to their ships, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of fear. They weren't the only ones. Other species began to reevaluate their stance on humanity. The once quiet race that had been easily dismissed had now become the galaxy's most feared adversary. Back on Earth, the humans were already planning their next moves. They had seen the vulnerability of the galaxy's most powerful empires, and they knew they could be part of something much bigger than just survival. The galaxy was wide and full of dangers, but humans had learned to thrive in the most brutal of environments. If they could fight back the Tikurin, they could handle whatever else the galaxy threw at them. The question now was, what would the humans do with this new power they had acquired? Would they sit back and defend, or would they take the fight to those who thought they were untouchable? The answer would come soon enough. The galaxy had only just begun to understand the true power of humanity. A galactic reckoning. The victory against the Tikurin had not gone unnoticed. Across the stars, whispers spread like wildfire about the humans, those bold, audacious creatures from a remote world, whose reputation was now beginning to cast a shadow over the galaxy's most powerful empires. As the galaxy's most feared species, humans had earned something more dangerous than respect. They had earned fear. The Tikurin had underestimated the humans' ability to endure hardship and fight back with intelligence and strategy. But that defeat, shocking as it was, only served to fuel humanity's rise in the galactic pecking order. The humans were resilient, yes, but more importantly, they were quick to adapt. Unlike any other species before them, they adapted faster than any of their enemies could keep up. On the fringes of the Galactic Council, representatives from dozens of species gathered. The Tikurin, still licking their wounds from the battle, were no longer the feared presence they once were. The Vakarians, still shaken from their encounter with the humans, held their positions with quiet caution. Every species in the galaxy was looking for the next move from humanity, and none of them dared make the first move. Among the council members was a quiet, secretive race, the Zaraki, a species known for their calculating minds and vast networks of spies. They had been tracking the humans since the battle against the Tikurin, and their findings were unsettling. The Zaraki had been one of the few who had remained neutral, unwilling to make any alliances that could jeopardize their carefully crafted plans. They had long ruled the shadows of the galaxy, pulling strings from afar. But even they couldn't ignore the shift in the balance of power. One Zaraki operative, who had infiltrated the human systems, returned with troubling news. He reported that humanity was not only growing in numbers, but also quickly mastering technologies that had eluded others for centuries. The humans were not just survivors. They were innovators. Their ingenuity, combined with their tenacity, made them unpredictable and dangerous. Worse still, the Zaraki learned that the humans were already making strides into galactic diplomacy, seeking out potential allies who had previously never considered them a threat. The Zaraki, for the first time in their long history, felt a ripple of fear. Their web of control was slipping. The humans were learning fast. If humanity continued on this path, the whole galaxy could change, and the Zaraki could lose their influence. They needed to act, and they needed to act fast. But how? Back on Earth, the human governments were already planning. They had tasted victory, and now they were preparing for what came next. Leaders from around the world gathered in secrecy, understanding that the galaxy was in flux. With their newfound power, humanity could no longer remain isolated or passive. They had to prepare for the inevitable, a confrontation with those who would see them silenced before they became too powerful. In the dark corners of the galaxy, the Tikurin and Vakarians had begun to meet in hushed discussions. The Tikurin sought alliances, not just with the Vakarians, but with other races who had been humiliated by the humans' unexpected triumph. The Vakarians, now seeing their strength challenged, began to question their position in the galaxy. Their once unquestioned rule was beginning to feel fragile. Their only hope was to find an ally strong enough to help them contain the human threat before it became too great. The next few months would be pivotal. The galactic powers knew that the humans were coming to claim their place among the stars. No longer were they a mere curiosity or a race to be ignored. Humanity had become a force of nature, and it was only a matter of time before their full strength was realized. And so, the galaxy held its breath. Every species, every empire, knew that a reckoning was coming. The humans had shown that they were capable of far more than any had ever dreamed. The question now was not whether humanity would rise, but how far they would go. Humanity was not done yet, not by a long shot. They had only just begun. The unseen challenge. While the galaxy's major powers conspired and calculated their moves, humanity's leaders were far more focused on preparing for the inevitable conflict that was brewing. They knew that the Tikurin, the Vakarians, and the other galactic powers were watching them closely. They could no longer afford to be reactive. They had to be proactive in every way. The human strategy was not just about military power. It was about innovation, diplomacy, and psychological warfare. Humanity had learned quickly that their enemies underestimated their resilience. They had learned that they could win not only with brute strength, but also with cunning and ingenuity. Humans were masters of the unexpected, And that fact was starting to become a terrifying reality for every species in the galaxy. On Earth, a top-secret global alliance had formed. Military leaders, scientists, and diplomats from every corner of the world had come together to create a plan. They knew the galaxy wasn't just going to hand them a seat at the table. Humanity would have to fight for every inch of ground they wanted to claim. The humans were quick to develop technologies that could match or exceed anything the galactic empires had created. They had discovered new forms of energy and weapons systems that were far beyond the scope of what any other species had ever seen. And they were not shy about demonstrating their newfound capabilities. A few surprise tests of their new technology left galactic observers in shock and awe, unsure of how to proceed. But technology wasn't the only thing humans had on their side. They had a unity that no other species could replicate. While the Vicarians and Tikaran argued about alliances, and the Zaraki operated in the shadows, humanity stood together as one. Their cooperation and shared vision gave them an edge that few could comprehend. No matter how much the galaxy's powers tried to sabotage each other, humanity's strength came from their shared resolve. However, their rise did not come without its own set of challenges. The Zaraki, seeing the potential threat humanity posed, had quietly started spreading misinformation, planting seeds of distrust about human intentions. The whispers grew louder. Were the humans a true threat, or were they just another species attempting to rise too quickly and claiming more than they could handle? It wasn't just the alien powers who doubted humanity. Among their own ranks, factions began to form. Some humans believed that their future should lie with peaceful exploration, and they argued that the galaxy would open up to them through diplomacy, not war. Others were more militant, pushing for a more aggressive stance, believing that the galaxy would never respect them unless they were willing to fight for their place. This divide became a problem. While the majority of humanity's leaders worked tirelessly to unify the human race in their approach, the simmering conflict between these factions risked tearing apart their delicate unity. The challenge now wasn't just the threat from other species, it was the risk of humanity's internal collapse before they even had the chance to claim their rightful place. Across the galaxy, spies from various empires had infiltrated human colonies, trying to learn more about their secretive advancements and military capabilities. The Tikaran in particular were concerned about humanity's ability to harness psychological warfare, something the galactic powers had never truly encountered. The Tikaran, accustomed to brute strength, found themselves struggling to adapt to the humans' ability to outthink them. But the humans were smart. They knew the galaxy was watching, and they weren't about to give up any advantage. The United Earth government had already put plans into motion, creating false flags to mislead their enemies and keeping the true extent of their weapons and abilities under wraps. No one, not even the Zaraki, could know what humanity was truly capable of until it was too late. But with all the posturing and preparation, one thing was becoming clear. The galaxy was no longer a safe place for anyone who underestimated humanity. The quiet moments of peace that the galaxy once enjoyed were beginning to feel like a distant memory. Across the stars, those who had once laughed at the idea of humanity rising now felt a cold sense of dread. For the first time in recorded history, every major empire, every advanced species, was unsure of how to handle the rising tide of human power. And as the tension continued to build, the question on everyone's mind became clear. Would humanity use its power to conquer, or would they change the galaxy forever? The Human Gambit. In the shadows of the galaxy, a dangerous game of chess was being played. The Tikaran, once confident in their position as the galaxy's most powerful species, now found themselves questioning their every move. The Zaraki, always elusive and secretive, began to shift their tactics. Even the Vicarians, with their terrifying biological prowess, started to wonder if they had underestimated humanity in their pursuit of dominance. But humanity wasn't interested in playing by the rules of the old galactic powers. They had learned the art of subterfuge and covert operations like no other species before them. They understood that sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't brute force. It was the ability to manipulate events from the shadows. The humans had devised a plan, one that would change the galaxy forever, and they were carefully executing it. It began with a series of covert operations that struck at the heart of the galactic powers' economies. Their networks of spies, their cyber warfare experts, and their smarter-than-average soldiers were working together to cripple the infrastructure that supported the massive empires. The human presence was felt in unexpected ways. Sabotaged shipments, hacked communications, and unexpected ambushes that made no sense at first glance. The Tikoran had already been dealt a severe blow by their miscalculations. They had underestimated how easily humans could infiltrate their ranks and influence their technology. Their reliance on traditional brute force warfare became their greatest weakness as humans began to strike at their most vulnerable points. The once dominant species found themselves struggling to adapt to new tactics that they had never considered before. Zeraki intelligence also began to crack under pressure. The humans were breaking into their most secure systems, planting seeds of confusion and division within their ranks. The Zeraki were known for their cunning, but even they were beginning to feel the weight of humanity's presence. It was clear now. Humanity was playing a different game, and the galaxy was slowly becoming a stage for this complex, multi-dimensional battle. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were far from unified in their approach. The divide between those who wanted to pursue diplomacy and peaceful exploration and those who advocated for a more aggressive stance began to widen even further. The political landscape on Earth was in chaos. Factions were forming, and the pressure to make a decision was becoming unbearable. But the military factions, those who had been carefully planning for this moment, knew that they couldn't waste time on internal squabbles. They had already made their decision. The war was inevitable. They were going to prove to the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated, and they were going to do it in a way that would leave a lasting legacy. Behind closed doors, a select group of military strategists and scientists came together to execute the final step in their master plan. The deployment of a superweapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The weapon itself was still classified, its details shrouded in mystery, but the humans were confident that it would tip the scales in their favor once and for all. This was humanity's ultimate gambit, a move that would change everything. In the midst of all this chaos, a single message was sent out to every corner of the galaxy. It was a message that would be received by every species, whether they wanted to hear it or not. Humanity is no longer a species to be feared. We are the galaxy's most terrifying force. The galaxy held its breath, unsure of what would come next. Would the humans use their new weapon? Would they engage in total war, forcing the galaxy to bend to their will? Or would they attempt to turn their newfound strength into a diplomatic advantage, using fear as leverage? One thing was certain. The age of underestimating humanity was over. No one was safe, and no one could predict what the humans would do next. The reckoning. The galaxy stood on the edge of a precipice. The ripple effect of humanity's actions had spread far and wide, shaking the foundations of the galaxy's power structure. What had once been a collection of proud, established empires was now a fractured and uncertain expanse. No one could deny the growing strength of humanity, nor the dread they had instilled in the hearts of every other species. But humanity wasn't satisfied with just fear. They wanted respect, power, and a seat at the table of the galaxy's future. Their ultimate weapon was prepared and ready. Its power was beyond comprehension, a force that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy itself. A weapon designed not for total destruction, but for control. The galaxy would be forced to acknowledge the human's place in the universe. In the silent void of space, the countdown began. The weapon was in position, and the humans were prepared to make their move. It was a decision that would either lead to the galaxy's submission or total collapse. The Tikoran had been the first to feel humanity's wrath. Their fleets, once invincible, now lay scattered across the galaxy, crippled by the strategic genius of human warfare. Yet even as their forces dwindled, the Tikoran refused to bow. They rallied their remaining ships, desperate to make one last stand. But they weren't the only ones watching. The Zaraki were on the move as well. Their spies had uncovered the humans' plans, and now they scrambled to devise a counter-strategy, one that would stop the superweapon before it could be deployed. And then there were the Vicarians, pragmatic and brutal, who believed that the galaxy's future lay in the hands of the strongest. They saw the rise of humanity as an opportunity, a dangerous one, but one nonetheless. They began to move into position, ready to either ally with humanity or crush them once and for all. In a darkened war room on Earth, the humans were about to make a final decision. Their military leaders gathered around a large table, their faces illuminated only by the cold glow of the holoprojector. The tension in the room was palpable, and the air felt thick with anticipation. The leader of the human coalition, a battle-hardened general with countless victories to his name, stood up and addressed the room. "We've done everything by the book," he said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "But now it's time to take the final step. We've built our reputation on fear and power. And now, it's time to show the galaxy just what we're capable of." The room went silent as the weight of his words hung in the air. The fate of the galaxy rested in humanity's hands. With a single decision, they could tip the balance of power for centuries to come. "We've sent a message," the general continued. "But now we make it clear that we are not just survivors. We are conquerors. The galaxy will kneel before us, or it will burn." The humans weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to ask for permission. The time for diplomacy had passed. The time for fear and dominance had arrived. As the final button was pressed, the weapon activated. Across the galaxy, everything froze. A wave of energy swept through space, its pulse shaking the very core of every star system. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't meant to destroy, but its impact was undeniable. The galaxy's communication systems went dark. The power grids of the largest civilizations flickered and failed. Entire fleets were suddenly disoriented, unable to function as they once had. The humans had proven their point. They were now the galaxy's most terrifying force. The T-Corin fleet, which had tried to rally for one last stand, found their ships suddenly immobilized. The Zaraki, known for their ability to manipulate technology, found themselves completely blind to the movements of the humans, and even the Vicarians, with all their might, were caught off guard. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They hadn't just won a battle, they had shown the galaxy that they were unstoppable. But the true power of their move lay not in the destruction they had caused, but in the uncertainty they had created. No one knew what humanity would do next. No one knew how far they would go or what they would demand. For the first time in history, the galaxy was at humanity's mercy, and no one knew how to respond. The message had been clear. The universe was no longer a place where only the strongest thrived. It was now a place where the most unpredictable force held the reins, and humanity had proven, beyond a doubt, that they were ready to take control.